warning, not for the faint of heart. What I saw that night in Willow Creek will haunt me forever. I wasn't walking among humans. I was surrounded by shadows, mimicking life. And as dawn approached, one corpse, still fresh, stood up before me, its hand clutching a rusty machete. My fate hung in the balance as the darkness whispered around me. I boarded the bus to Willow Creek at 10 a.m., but it broke down 3 times. By afternoon, I should have reached Haven Ridge, yet I arrived at 3 a.m. Roads were poor, the cold piercing. I stepped off, shivering, engulfed in darkness. The few passengers who had left earlier had vanished into the night. I was heading to my friend Leo's family home for the holiday, long overdue. The bus dropped me in a tiny market. A few stray dogs slept near a broken cafe. I wasn't easily scared. Horror books and movies never made me flinch. Leo had promised to pick me up with his Honda. Perhaps he waited until evening and then left. Leo was thoughtful, sincere, always kind. From Haven Ridge, he said a van would take me to Willow Creek in half an hour, but none were running at this hour. I began walking along the dirt road, shrouded in dense fog. The leaves rattled, whispering like ghosts. Leo had said, "The village is at the end of this path." My father, Dr. Hawthorne, runs the clinic. People injured by forest animals usually came to him. Some fell from trees, some were bitten by snakes or mauled by predators. The locals were brave, fearless, but the cold and isolation already tested me. Despite the freezing air, I was sweating. My throat felt dry, legs stiff. I hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. I wanted to knock on a door and beg, "Please, I'm hungry, sugar, bread, even a cup of water." But there were no houses, no lights, just the forest surrounding me. Then, in the distance, a flickering lantern appeared. A van moving slowly through the darkness, offering the first sign of salvation. I ran toward the van, glancing up at the sky and silently thanking any higher power. Inside sat a beautiful girl, 17, 18, crying. Another person lay down, body completely covered. An old man drove. I pleaded, "Please take me to Willow Creek, Dr. Hawthorne's house. I've lost my way." The driver nodded and gestured to the girl, Sophie, to show me where to sit. Relief surged through me. Help had arrived at last. The van moved slowly through the fog. Cold wind seeped in, slicing through me. Sophie cried silently. The covered body beside her remained motionless. I couldn't remain curious any longer. "Why are you crying?" I asked. She paused, wiped her tears, and whispered, "The person lying down, he was my husband. A snake bit him this evening. We are taking him to the Northridge Cemetery." My heart froze. I was next to a corpse. Fear gripped me as the van moved. The darkness seemed alive. The dirt road twisted in impossible ways. The wind, the fog, the trees, they all seemed to watch. Sophie's crying continued, yet no sound escaped her lips. Only her lips trembled. Something about her eyes. Unnervingly pale, almost white. My breathing caught in my throat. The covered body shifted slightly. The night wasn't just cold. It was alive with menace. Every moment, I realized the van was no ordinary vehicle, and Sophie, no ordinary girl. I couldn't see the full face of the covered body, but I could sense it watching me. Shadows stretched and twisted around us, as though the forest itself was bending toward the van. My stomach churned with fear and hunger. Each breath of cold air carried whispers I could almost understand. warnings. I couldn't escape. By the time we approached the outer edge of Willow Creek, I knew I had entered another realm. The darkness and fog thickened. Sophie's lips moved, but no sound came. The old driver's eyes reflected an unnatural gleam. Something about the entire journey was wrong. I was no longer just a visitor. I was prey, walking unknowingly into a place where shadows mimicked life and death, where the rules of reality were broken. The van sliced through the fog, but the darkness felt alive. Every shadow seemed to twist, following us. My heart pounded. I glanced at Sophie. Her eyes were pure white now, the tears not real, but like black smoke. The covered body beside her shifted slightly. The air smelled of decay and iron. I realized I was sitting next to death itself, yet somehow it moved like the living. Suddenly, the body stirred. At first, it was subtle. The covered shape twitched. Then, it lifted its head. The cloth over its face slipped slowly. Beneath, there was no lips, just twisted gums and cold blue eyes that glowed faintly. My stomach turned. The rusted machete in its hand caught the faint lantern light. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs were nailed to the van floor. The old driver whispered, "Don't be afraid. Sometimes they move at night." His voice was flat, cruel. My mind couldn't comprehend. In the freezing cold, something that should be dead was standing, wielding a weapon. Sophie stopped crying, her lips curving into a wicked, slow smile. The machete reflected light like it was thirsty for blood. I realized this was no accident. I was a target. The van veered off the main road, entering a path where no light existed. Tall, gnarled trees lined both sides, bending unnaturally. The dirt road seemed endless. The air was thick with an almost tangible dread. Something was moving beneath the ground, sounds like dozens of footsteps, though I saw no one. Every nerve in my body screamed to escape, but there was nowhere to go. I tried speaking to Sophie. Why? Why are you doing this?" She didn't answer like a human. Her voice carried multiple tones at once, overlapping, echoing in my skull. The covered body stepped closer. The machete gleamed. I realized the driver and Sophie were working together. Every instinct screamed that I would not leave alive. My hands shook violently. My mind raced to find a plan, any plan. The driver's arms wrapped around me from behind. His grip was impossible, stronger than steel. My attempts to struggle failed. The covered body raised the machete. Sophie lifted her small Chinese cleaver, its edge glinting in the lantern light. Fear, disbelief, and nausea hit me all at once. They were laughing, quietly, cruelly. I realized I was completely trapped, at the mercy of inhuman strength and merciless intent. Everything I had, neck chain, rings, my backpack, clothes, was ripped from me. I was defenseless. The machete hovered over me, Sophie's cleaver flashing. I could feel the cold air of the van and the weight of death pressing down. Every fiber of my body begged for escape, but I was powerless. The field outside stretched like an empty void, waiting for them to finish their cruel work. Sophie whispered, "Strip him and leave him in the field. Let the bugs finish." The driver moved in perfect sync, muscle and bone unnaturally coordinated. My heart was about to explode. Shame, horror, and fear mingled into a paralyzing weight. I felt utterly insignificant. The night had consumed all safety. I was prey in a forest of shadows, each breath a reminder that my life was no longer mine. In an instant, my consciousness slipped. The world blurred. Lantern light, fog, and pale skin melted together. I felt myself collapsing into nothingness. Their cruel laughter echoed in my ears as the machete and cleaver hovered over me. My limbs were numb, my mind empty. I was fully aware of my helplessness. The darkness had swallowed me, yet somehow life still lingered, fragile, trembling, uncertain. The field was silent, the fog thick, the trees looming. My senses dulled. I realized I was suspended between life and death. The van, the girls, the covered body, they were all moving in a rhythm I couldn't escape. My body was no longer mine. Fear had become a physical weight pressing down on my chest. Every sound, the crunch of leaves, the wind, the distant lantern flicker, was a reminder. They were still here, waiting, patient, merciless. I awoke in the rice field, freezing, naked, the mud clinging to my skin. The first sounds I heard were the distant prayers of dawn. Fajr's call echoed through the mist, strangely calming. I had survived, but how? Every part of my body ached, yet I was alive. The night's horrors pressed in on me, memories too vivid to dismiss as dreams. I knew I had been targeted by something not human. Village elders arrived with torches, murmuring among themselves. Their eyes widened as they saw me lying in the mud. They covered me with blankets and lifted me gently. No questions were asked about the van, the girl, or the covered body. Only whispered warnings. The forest at night takes its own. Speak of it, not to outsiders. Their silence was heavier than words, a mix of fear, respect, and ancient understanding. I was taken to Dr. Hawthorne's home. His face turned pale when he saw me. "Which path did you take?" he asked quietly. I described the fog, the van, Sophie, the corpse. He cut me off, motioning me to sit. "Do not repeat a word of this," he whispered. "You were lucky. Most who walk that path vanish forever. It has been cursed for decades, feeding on the living, wearing the forms of the dead." Sophie. She was the girl I saw. Dr. Hawthorne explained that years ago she had been a young bride, her husband bitten by a snake. She and the driver disappeared after carrying him to the cemetery. No bodies were ever recovered. Since then, they haunted the path, assuming human forms to lure travelers. The covered body I saw was real once, but now animated by some dark, restless force. I asked about the machete and cleaver. He explained that the forest absorbed the objects of violence, animating them, binding them to the cursed spirits. Sophie's cleaver gleamed because it carried her intent, her anger, her grief. The driver's strength was unnatural, imbued by the forest itself. I had faced an impossible duo, and yet, by some twist of fortune or mercy, I survived. Police and reporters arrived days later. Pictures were taken, stories written, but the villagers said nothing. They only smiled faintly, knowing that the truth was not for outsiders. I was asked not to discuss details. They called it the Night of the Shadows. Even though my body healed, the memory remained. Fear, disbelief, and the cold touch of death followed me. The path would always haunt me. Dr. Hawthorne asked quietly why I had survived. I whispered, "I asked for help." He nodded slowly. "They rarely speak first. You were alive because you acknowledged them, treated them as humans. Most travelers who flee silently are taken. You broke the unspoken rule. They let you go, partially, but you will carry the memory forever. I shivered. I realized survival was both mercy and curse. Even after 15 years, on cold nights, I hear footsteps in the mud. The rice stalks sway unnaturally. Sometimes in the fog, I glimpse a white dress, a gleaming cleaver, pale blue eyes staring. The shadows of Willow Creek wait patiently, knowing I am still marked. The machete's memory, the cold touch, Sophie's smile, all linger in my mind, a constant reminder that the forest never forgets. I have tried to avoid that path, but the curse isn't just the forest. It is memory, awareness, and fear. Every step outside, every shadow feels alive. The villagers were right. Outsiders cannot understand. They only see a story, a tragedy. But I know the truth. Life and death are not separate there. They intermingle. And sometimes they come to claim a soul again. Willow Creek, Blackwood Forest, the fog, the van, Sophie, the covered body. They are all part of me now. I live with half of my terror, half of my freedom. The shadows wait, the machete waits, the forest waits. And someday, if fate allows, they will rise again, and I will be there, trembling, knowing that some nights survival is merely temporary, and death is patient.